Okay, I'm going to tie a carp pattern now, and this is a fly. It doesn't have a name at this point. It's more of a style of fly that I want to show you here. There are a lot of variations to the carp flies that you can tie, and this is a particular type of fly that works well in the Missouri River near here. And what I think you'll find is that anywhere that you have a lot of carp and there's competition for food, a big pattern like that will work well. It's very similar to a lot of trout streamers, and just a few different little things that I'll show you. Now I'm going to start with a Dairiki 710 streamer hook, which is a long shanked, I've got one in the vise here, a long shanked heavy wire hook that works well. And the first thing I'm going to do is start my thread towards the back of the hook. Now, the next step is I'm going to take a rabbit strip, and I've got a brown one here. Black and olive are also good colors, but I want a dark color because when I'm sight fishing, I want to be able to have something that I can see real well in the water. And I'm going to hold that up here on the hook to size it up, and because I'm going to have a spun deer hair head on this, and I want to make sure that I've got it just where I need it to be. And that looks about right. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to spread the hair apart and lay it right down, right before the bend of the hook, right above the barb, and I'm going to go ahead and tie this down, just like so. Just get a couple good wraps on there so it won't go anywhere. And I'm just going to pull that out of the way. Now I'm going to grab, I've got some small brown copper wire here that I'm going to go ahead and lash onto the hook. And I really wrap that on there because I don't want that to pull out. Okay. Now you notice I have not put any weight on this hook at all, and that's because I want this fly. I want to have a big fly that is I'm going to be able to fish it very shallow. And if I put much weight on there, it's going to sink too much, and I won't be able to fish it the way I need it to. But if you're fishing in a little bit deeper water situation, you might need to put a little bit of weight on there. Now I'm going to add for a body just some straight tan chenille. And the way I like to attach that all the time is I always pull a little bit of the fuzz off the end so the threads are sticking out there. And it's just real easy to attach that, doesn't make any bulk, which is not important on this fly, but in other patterns it really can make a difference. And then I'm going to wrap my thread right up towards the front. Now I'm leaving plenty of room here to put my deer hair head. Okay, now I'm going to just wrap this chenille, and I'm really pushing it back in towards that rabbit strip. And I'm going to wrap it forward. Just make a nice even body, just like so. Tie that off and trim it. And at this point, now I can take this rabbit strip and pull it forward, and I'm going to pull it nice and tight and really pull that hair back and tie down on that nice and tightly. Now I'm using a flat wax nylon thread here, which is real strong thread. I use that to tie a lot of my saltwater patterns with, and it just is nice for spinning that deer hair and for being able to pull tight on things like this rabbit. Now, really, you don't need to have this wire in here. It's secure as it is, but for a little bit of durability, I added that wire. And so what I'll do is just simply rib that through the body, and I'm going to counter wrap it. It seems like I can get it through the hair a little bit better. So I'm wrapping it towards me instead of away from me. And I just simply pull the hair apart and wrap that around. And I spread the hair apart again just a little bit and wrap that around again. And I'll just do one more wrap here. Just going to weasel that through there so it isn't real obvious. And now I'll tie that off. Okay. Now at this point, and I'm making a nice bed of thread here so I can attach the deer hair and all of that. Now the next step before I do the deer hair is to put some fins on here, which is really optional, but it makes the fly look nice. And I'm using an India hen neck here, and it's a nice material. The feathers look real good for making fins. They're rounded on the tips, and they're also soft, so they actually do have some action in the water. And so I've picked out 2 feathers just like so, and if you'll notice that there is a natural bend to the feather. And I want to tie that in so that the bend of the feather is facing out, so those fins are going to naturally flare out. Okay? And I'm just going to tie that in and just try to figure out, I'm probably using about that much of the feather is going to stick out past the rabbit strip. I'm just going to tie that right in, like so. One towards me. And then I will attach the other one just like so. Now you can, if you want, peel away the fibers of the feather to make it nice and neat, but I don't worry about that. I don't think the carp worry about it very much. Okay, so now that's on there, and then we have our fins. Okay, so we've added the fins to the fly, and since we've taken that route and we're going to make this kind of fancy, there are a few other things that we can do that will really drive those carp nuts. And one of which is I'm going to put a little bit of this kind of amber colored crystal flash. I'm just going to add several strands of that right on top of the fly, right between the fins. And I'll just tie that right in like so. Very simple. And now, something that always looks nice, and I think it does make a difference at times, is I'm going to add some red Flashabou material here for some gills. And I'm actually going to get a fair amount of that. I don't know how many strands, probably 10. And I'm going to cut a short little bunch of that, just like so. And I'm going to go ahead and even the tips up. And I'm going to I turn the fly upside down on the vise here. I'm going to tie this right underneath, right in the throat, just like so. And you'll notice that they go back to about the hook point, and then we've got some sticking forward. I'm just going to take the ones that are sticking forward and wrap those back over top. And then I'll just kind of double the amount like so. And I can go back in here and trim these and make that nice set of gills just like so. I'm going to flip this back over. Okay, so now we've added the gills and a little bit of flash, and now we're ready to spin the deer hair head. Now I've got a nice patch of dyed brown deer hair here, and I really like this. There's not a lot of underfur in it. And it's just nice coarse hairs that are going to spin and stack real easily for me. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut a little bunch here, probably about the diameter, maybe a little less than a pencil. And I'll stick those in the stacker tips first. And I can stack these right in my hand. I can do it on the table. I've gotten used to doing it in my hand because I've got a sleeping baby in the house and it's a lot quieter to do it that way. And now I've got all the tips lined up nice and evenly there. And I'm going to go ahead and hold these up right on top of the hook, try to size them up a little bit. I don't want, this is going to be the collar, these nice fine tips around behind the head, and I don't want them to be longer than the fins. So I'm going to just hold them on there and basically grab them with my left hand and put my thread over top loosely and then just gradually tighten it up. And now I can do this, and you'll notice that that kind of slid towards the other side of the fly, which will make the collar, kind of the half of the collar on this side of the fly. Now I'm going to grab another bunch and do the same thing more on my side of the fly, and that'll round out that collar and make it look good. So we've got the tips lined up again. Pull that out. Tie that in right on my side here. And spin that out. Okay. Looks just about right. Kind of spread that out with my hands a little bit. Now I've got all this hair right in front, and I can just go ahead and pull this out of the way and move my thread right in front of it. And now I can just grab bunches of this hair, and I don't have to worry about stacking it because all the tips are going to be trimmed. And I'm just going to hold this in here, wrap over it loosely one time, let go of it, and just let it spin so it gets tight. And so it rotates around the hook, and all of a sudden it stops, and you know that's when it's secure. And so now all the tips are sticking out, and I'm going to hold the fly, the back of the fly in place so it doesn't slide, and then I can get my fingertips in here and really pack this back in towards the other hair that I've already tied in. Now I can tie right in front of that. I might pack it a little bit more. And I grab another bunch. And I'll spin that right in front. Pack it in there tight. And leave myself just a little bit of room for one more bunch. And for the last bunch, I'm going to use this white hair. Since carp fishing is a sort of a sight fishing game, I like to have this white on the front. At times, it can really make this fly stand out in the water. It does not help to catch any more fish, but it does seem to make this fly a little bit more visible to the angler. So something I like to add on there at the end. So I just tied in that one last bunch of white hair, and I'll train it back, pack it in there, and just enough room to finish a little head. And if I really hold this back, the hair will have just enough of a memory that I can squeeze a whip finish in there without binding down too many of the hairs. There we go. Okay, now the next step is to trim the hair on this fly. And I went ahead and made a special effort to make a nice collar around there, so I want to make sure that I don't trim that off. And the way I like to go in here is from the back towards the front, and I can be pretty aggressive to start with and really trim a bunch off the top, just like so. And then I need to be careful here that I don't cut off all that nice flash that I tied in. And I get in here and trim quite a bit off the bottom as well. Okay. And now that I've got it narrowed down on the top and the bottom, I can go in from the sides at an angle and trim that off. And really the size of the head is up to you. The more hair you leave on there, the more buoyant the fly will be. And if you're finding yourself fishing in situations where it's just several inches deep, sometimes those carp will get very shallow. Then having a fly with a large head and keeping it, very buoyant is particularly helpful. I just try to brush it up, get any of the butt ends out of there. Got some couple towards the back here. And this requires a lot of concentration. And we've just about got it. Something like so. Just a few loose ends on this side I can almost pull out with my hands. Okay. Okay. Now we've more or less got this trimmed. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. A little bit buggy is always good. And there we have it. Just a nice big old sculpin pattern that's going to be easy to see and is going to fish at the level of the water column. It's going to be just perfect for carp. How's that?